Ambassador Alan Miller stood at the viewport of the Galactic Assembly Station, his tired eyes fixed on the swirling nebula beyond. 200 years of careful diplomacy, of bowing and scraping, of never causing trouble. All of it might end today. "Sir, they're ready for us," said Lisa Gomes, his aide. Her voice was steady, but Alan noticed her fingers trembling as she straightened her uniform. "How many dead?" Alan asked, not moving from the window. "Final count is 8,412, all civilians." Alan closed his eyes briefly, and still the assembly refuses to acknowledge it as an attack. "They're calling it a regrettable boundary dispute, sir." The Vraxian Empire had destroyed an entire human settlement on Proxima Centauri 3 days ago. Not a military base, a colony of farmers, teachers, doctors, and children. The Vraxians claimed the humans had crossed into their territory. It was a lie, and everyone knew it. Alan turned from the window. "Let's go hear them tell us how regrettable it is." The assembly chamber was massive, with seating for representatives of over 200 spacefaring species. Humans had been members for exactly 2 centuries, but they still sat in the outer ring, far from the powerful inner circles where the true decisions were made. The Vraxian delegate, a tall being with iridescent scales and 6 upper limbs, didn't even look at the human section as he spoke. "While we extend our sympathies for the loss of human life, we must maintain that our border defenses were activated after repeated warnings. The humans were informed that the settlement location was contested territory." It was another lie. Alan had the star charts and treaty documents to prove it, but he knew it wouldn't matter. Humans were too small, too new, too weak to challenge a power like the Vraxian Empire. When it was his turn to speak, Alan kept his remarks brief and restrained, as human diplomats had done for 2 centuries. He formally protested, presented evidence, and requested an investigation. The assembly, as expected, voted to continue studying the situation. 12 hours later, Alan sat in his office composing his report to Earth when Lisa rushed in without knocking. "Sir, you need to see this." She activated the view screen, showing a live broadcast from Earth. The United Nations Security Council was in session, and the vote tally was just appearing on screen. The resolution had passed unanimously. The resolution to abandon the doctrine of galactic peace. For 2 centuries, this doctrine had been the cornerstone of human interstellar policy. Maintain neutrality. Never provoke. Develop quietly. Learn and prepare, but never threaten. It had kept Earth and its few colonies safe as they developed their technology, trying to catch up to species that had been spacefaring when humans were still figuring out agriculture. On the screen, Fleet Admiral Carol Davidson was addressing the Security Council. Unlike Alan's careful diplomatic tone, her voice carried steel. The Vraxian attack on Proxima Centauri, it was not just an act of war against humanity. It was a test. They wanted to see if we would respond, or if we would continue to absorb losses like we have before. The Assembly's refusal to act proves what many of us have long suspected. The peace we've purchased with our restraint is an illusion. She looked directly into the camera, and Alan felt a chill. We've maintained peace not because the galaxy respects us, but because they don't fear us. That changes today. The broadcast cut to massive shipyards in Earth orbit that had been disguised as civilian stations. Vessels were being retrofitted with weapons systems that had been developed in secret for decades. "We have the right to defend ourselves," Admiral Davidson continued. "And we will show the galaxy that when humans abandon peace, the consequences are severe." Alan's communicator chimed with a priority message from Earth. His new orders were simple: withdraw from the assembly session. Return to Earth immediately. Prepare for a new diplomatic reality. The era of human peace was over. Captain John Bennett walked the length of the Defiance *, running his hand along the freshly installed weapon ports. The ship had been a science vessel 3 weeks ago. Now it was the flagship of humanity's first strike force. "Ready to make history, Captain?" asked Dr. Samantha Wright. She carried a tablet displaying complex equations that John couldn't begin to understand. "Ready to make the Vraxians pay," John replied. "Will your shield breaker work?" Samantha smiled. "The aliens think their shielding technology is perfect because it's based on unified field principles that have been standard for 50,000 years. But humans approached quantum physics differently. We found a flaw that no one else ever noticed." Around them, the ship hummed with activity as the crew made final preparations. The fleet was small, just 7 ships that had been quickly retrofitted for combat. But surprise was on their side. And rage. 3 days later, the human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Vraxian space. They had chosen their targets carefully. 3 military installations, each located far from civilian populations. This was not to be a revenge killing. It was a message. "All ships report ready, Captain," said Lieutenant Eric Jones from the tactical station. John nodded. "Commence Operation Sudden Thunder." The human ships split into 3 groups and accelerated toward their targets. On the Defiance *, Dr. Wright monitored her equipment as they approached the largest Vraxian military base. "They've detected us," she reported. "Their shields are activating." On the view screen, a shimmering energy field surrounded the Vraxian base, a defensive system thought to be impenetrable throughout the galaxy. "Shield breaker status?" John asked. "Ready. The field is stabilizing at exactly the frequency we predicted." John took a deep breath. "Fire." The Defiance * launched a volley of missiles that appeared primitive by galactic standards. The Vraxians didn't even bother to intercept them. So confident were they in their shields. But when the missiles struck, something unexpected happened. Instead of dissipating against the energy field, they created a cascading failure that rippled across the entire shield network. In moments, the base was completely exposed. "Second wave," John ordered. The next volley struck the base directly, targeting power cores and weapon systems with surgical precision. The humans had no desire for mass casualties, only to demonstrate that Vraxian defenses could not stop them. Similar scenes played out at the other 2 targets. Within 20 minutes, 3 of the most secure military installations in the Vraxian Empire were crippled or destroyed. The human fleet then jumped back to faster-than-light speed before a response could be organized. 6 hours later, the Vraxian Emperor himself sent a communication to Earth. His scales were pale with shock. "Which major power are you aligned with?" he demanded of President Nancy Clark. "The Arcturians. The Sirius Coalition. We will negotiate with your masters directly." The Vraxians simply couldn't believe that humans had developed the technology on their own. In their mind, Earth must be a proxy for one of the galaxy's superpowers. President Clark smiled thinly. "We have no masters, Emperor. We acted alone in response to your unprovoked attack on our colony." "Impossible. Your species has been spacefaring for barely 2 centuries. And in that time, we've been watching, learning, and developing, while pretending to be harmless." The Vraxian Emperor was silent for a long moment. "What are your demands?" "Immediate reparations for Proxima Centauri, a formal apology before the Assembly, and recognition of all current human territorial claims. Or next time, we won't limit ourselves to military targets." After the communication ended, Admiral Davidson joined the President in her office. "The Vraxians have agreed to all our terms," she said. "But this is just the beginning. The galaxy will never see us the same way again." "Good," said President Clark. "For too long, they've mistaken our restraint for weakness. After 2 centuries of peace, the galaxy is about to learn what humans are truly capable of." Across the stars, news of the human strike spread rapidly, and for the first time in recorded history, the great powers of the galaxy looked toward Earth with something new in their eyes. The emergency session of the Galactic Assembly buzzed with nervous energy. Species that had never acknowledged humans now watched the Earth delegation with wary eyes. Richard Bell, Earth's senior diplomat, walked calmly to the speaker's platform. Unlike his predecessor, He made no effort to appear humble. The human response to Vraxian aggression was proportionate and targeted, Richard stated, his voice echoing through the vast chamber. We regret that it was necessary, but we do not apologize for defending our people. A representative from the Tellurian hegemony rose, their forearms gesturing in agitation. The human delegation must explain how they bypassed standard shield technology. Such knowledge threatens galactic security. Richard smiled slightly. The same way we developed faster-than-light travel despite being told it was impossible for a young species, we looked at the problem differently. He activated a holographic display showing additional human military capabilities that had been kept hidden. Not all of them, just enough to make a point. Humanity wishes to live in peace with all species, Richard continued. But that peace must be based on mutual respect, not the assumption that we are defenseless. As the session ended, many representatives hurried away to contact their governments. The galaxy's balance of power had shifted overnight. Later that day, a small green-skinned being approached Richard in a quiet corridor. The being wore the insignia of the Meridian Cluster, a group of worlds long oppressed by the Tellurian hegemony. My government wishes to speak with yours, the Meridian whispered. We have suffered under Tellurian rule for generations. Your people have shown that resistance is possible. Richard looked carefully around before responding. I'll arrange a secure meeting. 3 days later, Lieutenant Eric Patul stood before 20 Meridian fighters in a hidden facility on their homeworld. Earth had officially stated its attack on the Vraxians was a one-time action, but Admiral Davidson had quietly established a covert program to help other oppressed species. Forget everything you know about formal warfare, Eric told the Meridians. We humans have fought each other for thousands of years. We've learned that the weak can defeat the strong through guerrilla tactics. The Meridians looked confused. Guerrilla? What is this concept? Hit and run. Ambushes. Sabotage. Strike where they're weak, then disappear before they can respond. One Meridian raised a tentacle in objection. But these methods lack honor. The ancient codes of warfare. Eric cut him off. The ancient codes were written by those with power to control those without it. Did the Tellurians show honor when they bombed your civilian centers? When they took your children as hostages? The room fell silent. Humans fought for freedom many times in our history, Eric continued. We learned that when facing a stronger enemy, conventional tactics fail. You must be unpredictable. You must make them afraid to patrol your streets, afraid to oppress your people. He activated a hologram showing simple but effective explosive devices, communication jammers, and other tools of resistance. We'll teach you our methods, and we'll provide support. Across the galaxy, similar scenes play out as other subjugated species reached out to Earth. Humanity, once dismissed as primitive newcomers, was becoming a symbol of resistance. On Earth, Admiral Davidson met with President Clark in the underground war room. The Tellurians suspect our involvement with the Meridians, she reported. They've sent a formal warning. The president frowned. Can the Meridians protect our people there if the Tellurians attack? No, but our fleet can. That would mean open war with a major power. Admiral Davidson nodded gravely. Yes, and I'm not sure we're ready for that yet. Then pull Lieutenant Patul out. Tell the Meridians we need more time. And if they can't wait. President Clark stared at the galactic map, where dozens of worlds now glowed with the embers of potential rebellion. What had started as a single act of retaliation was spreading like wildfire. Then the galaxy will tremble even more, she said quietly, because humans never abandon allies. The message from the Tellurian hegemony arrived on Earth with no diplomatic padding. It was a direct threat. Stop supporting the Meridian resistance, or face destruction. President Nancy Clark read it twice before looking up at her advisors. Options. We could deny involvement, suggested her Secretary of State. Admiral Davidson shook her head. They have proof. Lieutenant Patel's team was captured on surveillance. Intelligence Officer Kevin Torres cleared his throat. "Madam President, there's something else you need to see." He placed a data crystal on the table. It projected a series of intercepted communications between the Vraxian Empire and the Tellurians. "They're planning a joint attack on the Sol system," Kevin explained. "The Vraxians want revenge, and the Tellurians want to make an example of us before more of their subject worlds revel." The room fell silent. Humanity had shown it could strike effectively, but defending against two major powers simultaneously was another matter entirely. "When?" the president asked. 3 weeks, by our estimates." Before anyone could speak further, the diplomatic aide rushed in. "Madam President, we have urgent requests for meetings from 3 galactic powers: the Arcturian Dominion, the Protean Confederation, and the Sirius Coalition." Everyone exchanged puzzled glances. These were 3 of the oldest and most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. They rarely involve themselves in conflicts between younger species. "All 3 want to meet with us?" the president asked. "Yes, Mom. Together. They're proposing an alliance." 2 days later, representatives from the 3 powers sat across from President Clark in the White House. The Arcturian delegate, a tall being with crystalline skin, spoke first. "The Tellurian hegemony has expanded unchecked for too long. Their alliance with the Vraxians threatens stability in multiple sectors." The Protean representative nodded her feathered head. "We have watched your species with interest. Your methods are unconventional, but effective. What exactly are you proposing?" President Clark asked directly. The Sirius delegate, a being of living metal, placed a document on the table. "A formal alliance. We provide you with advanced technology to accelerate your defense capabilities. You provide tactical innovation and help contain Tellurian expansion." President Clark studied them carefully. "Why now? Humans have been in the galaxy for 2 centuries. You never showed interest in alliance before." "Because you were hiding your true potential," the Arcturian said simply. "We now see what humans are capable of, and we believe your species might be the catalyst that changes the galactic order." Kevin Torres, standing behind the president, subtly tapped his datapad. The president glanced down to see his message. "They're telling the truth about the Tellurians, but they also fear us now. This alliance benefits them as much as us." President Clark was silent for a moment. She had not wanted to abandon peace, but now, caught between immediate threats and unexpected opportunities, there was really only one choice. "We accept your proposal," she said, "but with conditions. Earth maintains independence of action. All technology exchanges are mutual, and we expect support for all human colonies and outposts." The 3 delegates exchanged glances, then nodded in agreement. Later that night, Admiral Davidson and the president watched from the observation deck as Arcturian engineers began upgrading Earth's defense grid with technology centuries beyond human capability. "The Terran Alliance Treaty," Admiral Davidson said, testing the words. "I never thought I'd see the day when the galaxy's oldest powers would seek us as allies." "They're not just seeking allies," President Clark replied. "They're hedging their bets. They've seen what humans can do with primitive technology and surprise. They're wondering what we could do with advanced technology and preparation." "And what's your answer to that question, Madam President?" President Clark watched as the defense grid glowed with new power, a shield that would soon encompass the entire Sol system. "The galaxy's about to find out." Major Olivia Rodriguez moved silently through the dense forest of Tellurian moon-based Delta 7. 5 human soldiers followed her, their armor blending with the environment thanks to technology from their Arcturian allies. This was the 12th such raid in 2 months. "Target in sight," whispered Sergeant Frank Collins over their secure channel. The communications relay station stood on a hill, surrounded by Tellurian guards. It coordinated all military movements in this sector. "Remember," Olivia told her team, "we're not here to fight. Plant the devices and get out." The devices were tiny quantum disruptors developed by Dr. Wright and Arcturian scientists. They wouldn't destroy the relay. They would do something far worse. They would make it unreliable, causing messages to arrive corrupted or delayed at random intervals. Psychological warfare, Dr. Wright had called it when she briefed them. The Tellurians will waste enormous resources trying to fix a problem they can't even locate. The team moved in during shift change, planting the devices and disappearing into the forest without firing a single shot. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, conflicts erupted between various species. Some involved human interests directly, others seemed unrelated. But intelligence analysts on Earth began to see patterns. In his secure office beneath the Pentagon, Kevin Torres arranged holographic displays showing dozens of ongoing conflicts. Ambassador Miller, recently recalled from the Galactic Assembly, studied the pattern with concern. "It's not random," Kevin said. "Someone is deliberately provoking these wars." "The Vraxians?" Ambassador Miller asked. "No. Look at the data. Several Assembly members appear to be working together to create conflicts that weaken both Earth and our new allies." The door opened and Admiral Davidson entered with Dr. Wright. The scientist looked exhausted but excited. "The Arcturians have helped us perfect the phase shift weapon," Dr. Wright announced. "It can now penetrate any known shield technology in the galaxy." "Production timeline?" the Admiral asked. 3 months for the first batch." Ambassador Miller frowned. "We're moving too quickly toward weapons of mass destruction. The whole reason I supported our more aggressive stance was to protect human lives, not to start a galactic war." "It's already started," Kevin said quietly, "whether we want it or not." On the view screen, reports came in from the front lines. Major Rodriguez's team had successfully completed their mission. 3 Meridian rebel groups, trained by Lieutenant Patel, had liberated their capital city. The Protean fleet had engaged Vraxian forces at the edge of human colonial space and pushed them back. "The Assembly has officially split into blocks," Ambassador Miller noted. 4 major factions now, each aligned with different powers. The neutral zone is shrinking. Admiral Davidson studied the battle reports. The Tellurians and Vraxians expected an easy victory once they joined forces. They didn't anticipate how quickly we'd adapt their technology or how effectively we'd apply human battle tactics. "Deception, asymmetric warfare, psychological operations," Kevin explained. "Most alien cultures fight according to ancient doctrines. Predictable, formal, direct. Humans fight to win, using whatever works." Dr. Wright looked troubled. "But at what cost? The weapons I'm creating could destroy entire worlds." "Which is why we won't use them except as a last resort," Admiral Davidson assured her. "The best weapon is one you never have to fire." As they spoke, a priority message arrived from President Clark. A delegation from Zeta Reticuli, a mysterious species that rarely engaged with others, had arrived on Earth requesting an urgent meeting. "They say they have information about an ancient threat awakening at the galactic core," the president's message stated. "And they claim humans are the only species who might be able to stop it." Ambassador Miller looked at the others. "Why us? We're centuries behind most galactic powers technologically." Kevin Torres smiled grimly. "Maybe it's not about technology. Maybe it's about how humans think." Admiral Davidson nodded. "Or about what humans are willing to do when peace is no longer an option." The Zeta Reticuli delegate looked nothing like humans expected. Instead of a physical body, it was a swirling pattern of light contained in a simple metal orb. Its voice came through a translator, oddly musical. "We have watched all spacefaring species for millions of years," it explained to President Clark and her team. "We rarely interfere, but the awakening of the Axiom leaves us no choice." "The Axiom?" Admiral Davidson asked. "A machine race, ancient beyond comprehension. They went dormant at the galaxy's core when their creators vanished. Now they stir again." The orb projected images of massive mechanical structures at the galactic center, slowly powering up after eons of sleep. "Why come to us?" President Clark asked. "Earth is young compared to most galactic powers." "Precisely," the Zeta replied. Other civilizations have followed the same technological paths for millions of years. Their thinking is rigid, predictable. The Axiom knows all their strategies already. But not ours, Kevin Torres guessed. Humans are different. You take unusual approaches. You combine technologies in ways others consider illogical. You break rules. Dr. Wright frowned. Breaking rules isn't always a good thing. It is when the rules were established by those who will destroy you. The Zeta countered. The Axiom has planted sleeper programs in the standard technologies all major powers use. When fully awakened, they will control every fleet, every weapon system designed according to galactic norms. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. But not Earth's. Admiral Davidson said slowly, because we've been developing our own approaches. And those of your closest allies have been modified by your scientists, the Zeta added. President Clark leaned forward. What exactly do you want from us? Help us stop the Axiom before they fully awaken. No species can do it alone. But humans might discover a way that no one else would consider. After the Zeta departed, the president's team debated long into the night. Some wanted to ignore the warning and focus on current conflicts. Others saw it as humanity's chance to save the galaxy. We'll need to reach the galactic core, Admiral Davidson said finally. Current drive technology would take decades. Not necessarily, said a quiet voice from the back of the room. Everyone turned to see Jake Martinez, a young engineer who had been silently observing. He worked in the propulsion lab with Dr. Wright. I've been experimenting with a hybrid drive, Jake explained, suddenly the center of attention. It combines Arcturian field technology with human theoretical physics. Our simulations suggest it could reach the core in months, not decades. Simulations aren't reality, someone objected. No, Jake agreed. But I believe it will work. We just need to build it. President Clark studied him for a moment, then nodded. Admiral, give Engineer Martinez whatever resources he needs. Dr. Wright, your team will work with him. We're calling it Project Prometheus, Jake said, after the human who stole fire from the gods. 3 weeks later, Dr. Wright stood with Jake in the orbital shipyard, watching as their design took physical form. The ship looked unlike anything in the galaxy, part human, part alien, all innovation. Will it really work? She asked softly. Jake smiled. The Arcturians say it's impossible. The Proteans say it's dangerous. The serious engineers say it violates fundamental laws of physics. That doesn't answer my question. Yes, it does, Jake replied. Everyone says it can't be done. That's when humans do our best work. Below them, Earth glowed blue and green. Around them, shipyards stretched for miles, building the most advanced fleet humans had ever created. And beyond, the stars beckoned, including the distant center of the galaxy where an ancient enemy waited. Admiral Davidson joined them, watching the construction. The Tellurians and Vraxians have signed a temporary ceasefire, she informed them. They've also detected the Axiom's activation. Are they helping? Dr. Wright asked. No, they're building bunkers and hiding. Jake shook his head. That won't save them. I know, Admiral Davidson replied. That's why humanity has to succeed where they're afraid to try. The fleet of 12 ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the galactic core. The blackness of space here was broken by the dense cluster of stars and the eerie glow of the Axiom's network, ancient machines slowly coming to life after millions of years. On the bridge of the flagship Defiance Captain John Bennett watched the main view screen with a mixture of awe and dread. All ships report ready, said Commander Susan Rivera, his second-in-command. The Allied forces are in position. The coalition fleet included vessels from the Arcturians, Proteans, and Sirius beings, along with several other species who had joined when they realized the scope of the threat. But humans led the mission. It had been their plan, their drive technology that brought them here, their strategy they would follow. Begin scan, John ordered. The sensors probed the massive structures ahead. Each was the size of a small moon, connected by energy streams that pulsed with increasing strength. "The central nexus is there," said Jake Martinez, pointing to a structure at the center of the network. "That's the control hub." Dr. Wright studied the data with a frown. "The energy readings are off the charts. Our weapons won't even scratch it." "Conventional weapons, no," John agreed, "which is why we're not using conventional methods." He activated the ship's communication system. "All vessels, move to attack formation. Primary strike teams prepare for deployment." The fleet separated into 3 groups. The largest, led by Commander Rivera, would launch a frontal assault, a diversion to draw attention. The second group would attempt to disrupt the energy streams connecting the structures. And the third group, just the Defiance and 2 support vessels, would attempt something no other species had even considered. As the attack began, energy beams from the axiom structures lashed out, destroying 3 Allied ships immediately. The Coalition fleet returned fire, their weapons seeming puny against the ancient machines. "They've taken the bait," Susan reported from her command ship. "All axiom defenses are focusing on our group." John nodded. "Begin Phase 2. The second group launched special disruptor devices designed by Dr. Wright and her team. They targeted the energy streams connecting the axiom structures, causing temporary fluctuations. "It's working," Dr. Wright said, watching the readings. "The network is destabilizing, but it's already adapting." "We don't need long," John replied. "Jake, are we ready?" The young engineer nodded, his face pale but determined. "The drive is modified. But Captain, I have to warn you again. The math on this is theoretical. No one has ever attempted to drop out of FTL travel inside another object. Because it's considered suicide," Dr. Wright added. "No," John corrected, "because it's considered impossible. There's a difference." He opened a channel to the entire fleet. "This is Captain Bennett. Commander Rivera's forces will continue the frontal assault. All other ships withdraw to safe distance. The Defiance is proceeding with Operation Firestorm." The reactions from their alien allies were immediate and alarmed. "Human vessel, you cannot seriously intend to," began an Arcturian commander. "Your ship will be destroyed the moment you attempt transit," warned a Procyon captain. John cut the communications. "Helm, set course for the Axiom Nexus. Prepare for FTL jump on my mark." The Defiance turned toward the center of the Axiom network. Jake made final adjustments to the drive system. "If this works," he said quietly, "the spacetime disruption from emerging inside the Nexus should create a cascading failure throughout their entire network." "And if it doesn't?" Dr. Wright asked. "Then we never know we failed," John answered simply. The axiom structures seemed to sense their plan. Energy beams converged on the Defiance position, but the ship's enhanced shields, designed by Dr. Wright, held just long enough. "FTL drive at full power," the helm officer reported. John took a deep breath. Everything human history had led to this moment. Not strength or advanced technology, but the willingness to attempt what others considered impossible. "Mark," he ordered. The Defiance vanished in a flash of light, jumping to faster than light speed on a trajectory that would bring it out of FTL directly inside the Axiom Nexus, a maneuver that violated every rule of physics that the galactic powers understood. Across the battlefield, every being held their breath, watching the heart of the enemy network. Then came a flash of light more brilliant than a supernova. 3 months after the battle at the galactic core, representatives from over 200 species gathered on Earth. It was the first time in galactic history that the homeworld of such a young species had hosted such an important meeting. The Great Hall of the United Nations had been expanded to accommodate beings of all shapes, sizes, and atmospheric requirements. At the center podium stood President Nancy Clark, Admiral Davidson, and the survivors of the Defiance. Captain John Bennett still looked tired. The scars on his face might never fully heal, but he stood tall as President Clark addressed the gathered delegates. "Today we sign the new Galactic Compact," she announced, "a new beginning for all our peoples." The Axiom had been defeated. When the Defiance emerged from FTL travel inside the central nexus, the space-time disruption had indeed created a cascading failure throughout the entire network. The ancient machines had collapsed, their power fading. The ship itself had been torn apart by the forces involved, but its emergency pods had saved most of the crew. Captain Bennett, Jake Martins, and Dr. Wright had been recovered by Commander Rivera's vessels, barely alive but triumphant. The human tactic was irrational, admitted the Arcturian Prime, addressing the assembly. By all known physics, it should have failed. That is why we never considered it. And why it worked, added the serious delegate. The Axiom's predictive systems, like ours, dismissed the possibility entirely. Ambassador Miller stepped forward. The veteran diplomat had helped shape the new compact over weeks of negotiation. For too long, the galaxy functioned according to rigid principles established by the oldest civilizations, he said. The human approach is different. We adapt. We improvise. Sometimes we break rules that need breaking. The Vraxian Emperor, once Earth's enemy, now nodded in agreement. When the humans abandoned peace, we trembled. But their warriors saved us all. After the ceremony, Admiral Davidson watched from a balcony as the alien delegates mingled with humans in the gardens below. Many examined Earth plants and animals with curiosity. Others sampled human food and drink, with varying reactions. "What happens now?" asked Dr. Wright, joining her. "The new compact creates a multi-species rapid response force," the Admiral replied, "with humans in key leadership positions, naturally." "Naturally," Dr. Wright smiled. "Our tactics may be unconventional, but they're effective." Captain Bennett and Jake Martinez approached, both still using mobility aids as they recovered. "The Zeta representative says other species are studying human history now," Jake said. "They're particularly interested in how we've overcome our own existential threats." "Through innovation and determination," Captain Bennett replied. "The same way we defeated the Axiom." President Clark joined them, having concluded her official duties. "The galaxy has changed. The old powers now look to Earth for leadership. Not just because of our victory," Admiral Davidson noted, "but because of what came after. We could have used our new status to dominate. Instead, we're building a more equal system. Peace through strength," the President said. "The doctrine that replaced our old policy of neutrality." Below them, Commander Rivera was demonstrating Earth music to a group of fascinated aliens. Elsewhere, Lieutenant Patel, now promoted for his work with the Meridians, was deep in conversation with former enemies. The stars shone brightly in the evening sky. Among them, the former Axiom network had been repurposed as a galactic communication system, connecting worlds that had previously been isolated. "We still have much to learn from older species," Ambassador Miller said, joining their group. "But they have much to learn from us as well." President Clark nodded. "A reporter asked me today to summarize Earth's new approach to galactic politics. I quoted an ancient human saying, 'Peace is our preference, but never mistake our restraint for weakness.'" Captain Bennett smiled. "I think the galaxy understands that lesson now." "Yes," Admiral Davidson agreed, gazing up at the stars that no longer seemed so distant or threatening. "I believe they do."